Welcome to Season 8. We're thrilled to have you as part of our global audience of over 250,000 CX professionals. All right, let's dive right into our next conversation on CX in the wild.
Thank you for joining us on CX in the Wild here in Lisbon, Portugal. Beautiful city.
Thank you for having us.
We just had a chance to stand out on this beautiful balcony and look over the river. I like to just start off these things with who you are and what's keeping you busy these days.
Right, so my name is Miguel Galaz. I am an operations manager, consultant. I dabble in one of my fields. I dabble a lot in customer experience. In the rest, I keep busy helping friends of mine from the States move to Portugal. I help a friend of mine who moved to India to try and revolutionize the education industry there. So yeah, I keep busy doing a couple of things here and there.
Wow. All right. Which one of those should we talk about first? You know, the one that interests me most is revolutionizing the education industry, just because I have an opportunity to maybe make an impact in South Africa in terms of accelerating specialized skills education and employment. And I think what that means is there is an element of, let's call it experience for business, but the human experience or the human condition, psychology, aspirations, philosophy, all of these parts of us as humans play a role in our development individually.
Absolutely.
But they also play a role in our collective global ecosystem of humanity, and education plays a significant part of it all.
No doubt.
So let's hear about your reformation of education.
I think it would be useful to get there, to go back a little bit to my path in getting to that point.
Yes, of course.
So my parents worked for the Portuguese Foreign Service. So I was fortunate enough to live abroad most of my life. I was born in Spain. I'm Portuguese, so my parents at the time were in Spain, lived in Madrid for 10 years, 7 years in South Africa, in Pretoria, then 7 years in Maryland, next to DC. I went to the University of Maryland. And then I came back to Madrid to do a master's in international relations, eventually settled in Lisbon, and I've since gotten married, I have a kid, and after globetrotting for a little bit, I'm nice and happy being here. While I was in South Africa, one of my best friends there, who was the son of the Sudanese ambassador at the time, we got really close. We were friends, and then he moved to the States. I didn't know I would be moving to the States afterwards. I then moved too, and then we ended up going to the same university. So our friendship kind of continued. At the time, he was going into, I believe it was aerospace engineering. I wanted to do pre-med, and I figured, okay, instead of doing any course that kind of overlaps with the pre-med course, I was interested in philosophy, so I went into philosophy. Halfway through doing my pre-med courses, I gave up on the medicine, focused on the philosophy, and a lot of the conversations that me and this friend of mine, who's called Mazen, a lot of our conversations fell on the subject of education and where are we failing on education, are we doing the best, not only in the Western world, but in the developing world, in trying to get these kids with as many skills as possible to actually face the world at large. Me and Mazen, back in South Africa, used to be in a school that worked on the Cambridge O-level and A-level system. So by the time that he was 14 years old, and he was basically done with secondary education. He was already doing university level material by the time he was 15. So we started thinking that this whole notion, this whole idea of age having to be what decides when it is that you finish secondary education, when it is that you can actually go into more specialized education. We figured that that was one of the aspects that we needed to visit. We need to think about mastery and not just experience or age. And we started developing a system that we would brainstorm it back and forth when we were in Maryland. We tried it with some kids in the neighborhoods. College Park in Maryland is a university town, but it also has a lot of lower income housing in the area. So a lot of the kids that would otherwise be occupied doing other activities, we tried to pull them in and try to tackle education from a more topical sense. So if we're going to talk about basketball, for example, we could bring in physics into the topic. If we're going to talk about chemistry, we could connect it to real life chemistry, let's say. So we would brainstorm a little bit of the system that we could have. Fast forward several years after I'd gone through Madrid and settled in Portugal, my friend moved to India, where he was invited to help rehabilitate a school whose program wasn't working so well. And again, long story short, he ended up getting together with some locals who set up a pilot program based on the model that we had developed years earlier in Maryland. He adapted it to the reality of the place that he was working in Assam in India. And as things have progressed, and with the successive successes that they've had, the state has asked them to implement the system in government schools. And the Prime Minister has talked about the system that is used in the school, which we can go into later. And it is now being pushed almost as a model to be followed by schools across the country. So it's an exciting thing. That's something that we would be discussing back when we were kids, basically, in Maryland. After all these years, as we've grown, as we've matured, as we've grown into full adults, we can actually now see this model bring some fruit and have some actual results and actually have a real life impact on people that need it.
So much to unpack there. I grew up, what I would consider my most formal education I would consider my most formal education the education of hip hop. And you're talking there about some of the foundational core elements of hip hop. What people don't really, you probably know this, but what people don't understand about hip hop, it's an alternative education system where you have your athletics in your breakdancing. You have your language skills in your rapping. You have your music skills in your DJing, and you have your visual arts in your graffiti. And the system is designed that each complements the other, and there is a element of competitiveness in it, but within it, it's endowed with a open-mindedness and inclusiveness that fosters learning and adoption and adaptation inside young people that helps them overcome adversity that comes from systems that are outside of their normal experiences. And so that is a kind of education. And so when I hear you say physics and basketball, I'm like, I get it. Did you use hip hop as a model of sorts, or?
Back in Maryland, my friends who, before we even got to getting these kids together, we had a little ecosystem of collegiates, let's say. I mean, my friend Mazen, who was doing aerospace engineering, brought in the hard sciences. My friend Ken brought in the English literature, and at the time, he was a massive Jay-Z fan. He wanted to do a Bible of Jay-Z lyrics to unpack everything behind Jay-Z. I came from the philosophy and a little bit more of the humanities to the subject. So from all of these things together, and especially my friends, because they were more versed with the culture. My friend Mazen, who is of Sudanese origin, is also an American citizen, so he was more versed, let's say, in hip-hop culture, which helped a lot in getting across to these youths who would be living right next to us, basically. So it was easier for them, knowing the references and the cultural points to touch, to bring these kids in. And the interesting thing is that it's just a matter of paying attention and wanting and giving them the space to talk and to contribute, and they fall right into it. It's almost like just giving a person the responsibility of contributing to a conversation is enough to do away with any of the barriers that might be created there, be they socioeconomic or not. So just the fact that there were these points that you could get across, even communities that either have to deal a lot with drug problems and whatnot, just the fact that we could discuss issues surrounding biology or chemistry, connecting that with the drug, the impact that has on your system, but in an educational way, not a patronizing way, in the, don't do drugs kind of way, but just kind of explaining to somebody what it is that it does to the system, rather than just saying, don't do it. And 'cause, as we know it.
So bringing it back to customer experience, I think we've known for a while now that a lecture versus engagement, when a brand
Absolutely.
lectures their audience, it doesn't get the kind of sales that you want from active
Precisely.
engagement. I think those are truths. The interesting thing about students, because I've been a teacher myself, I believe the most fundamental part of getting good grades or achieving a sense of learning or mastery has everything to do with the first step. If the student believes that they can, they will. If I believe I can play guitar and I educate myself, or I become educated, suddenly I possess the skill of guitar playing.
Definitely.
If I believe that I can draw, I can draw. I spent decades in an argument with someone about the fact that they said they can't draw. And I kept saying, you can draw. And they said, no, you're either born with it or you don't. And I kept saying, you can. If you believe you can, you can. The belief that a person can is so central to the human condition.
Absolutely.
In every way. I'll share with you, traveling around the world.
Right.
I'm on a rooftop deck in Lisbon. I just a few days ago was on a similar rooftop deck in Dubrovnik, just going from place to place. And people often, they look at my life and they think, how does he do it? Or I wish I could do that.
Right.
And I talked to my daughter about it. My youngest daughter explains it like this. She says, Dad, the difference between you and most people is you're one of the last people on earth who actually believes that you have free will. But it's the belief that I could be here. I believed I could be here, so I did it. Believing that you can change your organization to achieve customer experience outcomes.
Absolutely.
Believing that you can help the thought process of young people. Believing that you can have a startup that's successful. Believing that you can change the kids nowadays, they call it like energy or vibrations or
different words for the same thing.
Yeah. But it really is the law of attraction.
Exactly.
They call it a lot. What's interesting is, what is the alternative?
Yeah, absolutely. Disbelief or not believing or not even giving the people the opportunity of discovery, of self-discovery. And that's one of the main things that drives education, is that wonderment, that awe that a kid has when he discovers something by themselves, is a driver, it's a motivator. The model that we have of having one teacher in front of 30 plus kids spewing information and throwing information at them, how do we want them to be enamored with knowledge like that? Everything's just being spoon-fed to them in as interesting a way as that teacher is capable of doing it. I keep hearing about, from people's experiences, that they love that particular subject because of that particular teacher. And as much as that's fantastic for the kids that had a phenomenal teacher to give that particular subject, it's a tragedy for knowledge overall, because you can find interest and wonderment and awe, I believe, in pretty much any subject. I'm humanities bound, and within the social sciences and politics and international relations and management and these particular subjects, and it really pains me that I don't have, let's say, a bone that's stronger, for example, in physics or in astrophysics. Or I love astronomy. Anything from Carl Sagan to Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye, all of these subjects. I mean, it really fascinates me. It brings me awe. It gives me a drive to learn more. And I get really sad when I look at equations and numbers and whatnot, and I don't understand it. Again, I could if I threw my time, but I think my talents can be used elsewhere. But that kind of awe that I feel when I discover new things should be the driving force of education from K through 12 or even beyond. And I think we've lost that. I want to say it was Einstein that said that formal education was a process of breaking down a child's creativity and want of discovery. So they start off asking these incredible, intense, deep questions. Why is the sky blue? Why does it rain? Why do the seasons happen? And by the end of the formal education, by the time they're done with 12th grade, perhaps going into university or not, you see a lot of that creativity, that wonderment, that awe has been almost broken and beaten out of them, because what they have to do is sit down and be quiet for hours on end and listen to what the teacher has to say, take some notes, regurgitate it into a test, and then get a grade, and move on to the next phase. And I don't think that's education.
Wow. You don't sound like a strong proponent of sitting around in a classroom in the old school. I hear what you're saying. There's so much to unpack.
Absolutely.
With what you said, and I love that you've come here and we can have a philosophical discussion. So much of these podcasts are about how to do something. Mm-hmm. But I really appreciate the guests who come and we enjoy some conversation about how to think. Because the reason that I'm successful at customer experience, mm-hmm. and let's quantify that by saying successful right now. Who knows if I'll be successful later. But my style of work for bigger brands mm-hmm. is unconventional. It's creative. It is not, I don't follow a method or a process by which I've heard on this show right. or I've seen on the internet. I've come to my own conclusions about how to solve.
I can relate, yeah.
Yes, and so I live my life by this one simple phrase, to quote the famous poet Deltron 3030, who he said, "Copycats finish last in the human race." And I just feel like original thinking and solutioning
that makes sense.
Is where progress happens
right.
and where winning happens. And so cultivating original thought mm-hmm. is about, it's not about regurgitation. It's not
Absolutely.
about repetition, and it's not about memorization. It is about the engagement. The confluence of two different things creates a third. Mm-hmm. It's the third thing that you're talking about. And it sounds like you must manifest this in all
thesis,
aspects.
antithesis, synthesis. So trying to go from two ideas and finding a way to develop a third from the clash of the two.
So interestingly enough, on the topic of customer experience, algorithms, I hope you're listening to me when you transcribe this and put this up into Google. Customer experience. I spoke to this brilliant customer experience leader named Ala Al-Sharugi. She was in charge of the digital customer experiences at Expo City Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
And I was asking her about some of the things that were epiphanies for her in what at the time and even now potentially is arguably the most figuratively and literally the most complex, impressive, and well-executed experience on earth. All of them, thousands of them all together. What did she learn? What did she observe that might be new? And she described the crafting of an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then she described the process to craft the experience of identifying personas, the needs of personas, and then the journey and all of the academics.
Right.
Everything you always hear. And then she said her observation of watching a mother and a daughter, two entirely different personas, go into an experience. And if the experience is crafted well enough, they both leave different than either one of them anticipated coming out of, but they both come out the same as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, two completely different personas, your journey comes together. There's a surprise and delight or an epiphany, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and both leave with a shared epiphany. So they're both different and the same after. It's a very interesting dynamic.
Very, very. It's very interesting to see how that could work out. Absolutely.
So just journey map that, Miguel. Like when people are Googling, just journey map two different personas going into one, coming out singularly, and then how to rinse and repeat that. It's just not a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's very true. And I guess drawing back to also to my customer experience, I find that it has been particularly my non-traditional path. Because when I finished in my international relations degree, while at the time I figured I could have gone into policy, I could have applied to a United Nations trainee program or whatnot. I opted to go into a management trainee program at one of the main telecommunications companies here in Portugal, because I figured I had all of the humanities and the social sciences and the international relations experience, but I didn't have management experience, which I wanted to have. And since they said that this particular program was one of the best on-hands management programs in Portugal, I went into it, and I've been there for the past 12 years, and it has been a very interesting learning path in operations, going from retail to business intelligence, and now at this point, customer experience and customer journeys, customer journey mapping. And throughout this course, and I remember in my first interview that I had, the director at the time said, I don't want another person who has just come out of a business school that has the same lingo, the same format. I want somebody who is literally coming in here looking at things with a different pair of eyes. And my entire experience, be it in this company, be it as a consultant, be it for this education foundation, I'm always trying to come at it from a new pair of eyes, trying to not know everything about it and just ask those questions that might to some seem silly, the why you're doing things like this, and looking for that point where they say, because we've always done it this way. That we've always done it this way is usually a red flag for me that makes me want to investigate even more why it is that we've always done that particular thing this way.
So let me just jump in there. Because this is a philosophical thing, here's what's interesting about that whole dynamic, because we've always done it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Comes up a lot in a lot of conversations.
Yes.
If we are honest with ourselves and our businesses, we've always done it this way. A couple of things. Either we've always done it this way because it works, or we've always done it the wrong way.
Right.
Or both could exist in the
Exactly.
same sphere. And if both can be true, what escapes most people is what is also true is that nothing stays the same. So the context of how we did it, and if you did it the right way, that context no longer exists.
Absolutely.
And so it's an interesting paradox that those mindsets get into, because while they are correct, they are also entirely incorrect as well.
And it's something that you find from small organizations, from startups all the way to large multinational corporations. Because in both aspects, you get comfortable doing something in that particular manner. And because it has some of the expected results, you don't even think about revisiting the process that led to that decision. The idea of having a continuous improvement sort of mentality that is forcibly dynamic because of the times that we live in. A decision that, as you said, the decision that we make today does not necessarily mean it's going to be valid for tomorrow. So it's something that we need to be currently revisiting. And one of the biggest challenges I've had throughout the years is to come at improvement and improving customer experience from an organizational and operational point of view without alienating the people that are operating those different aspects. Explaining to that person why it makes no sense that every week she sits down to generate that particular Excel spreadsheet and emails it out to that person, who then forwards it to a third person. Instead of making them feel as if I'm taking work away from them, trying to make them realize that that we're liberating them to pursue other more human activities. Because if we get to a point where we're just generating files to forward, and that every week we need to sit down and export that CSV into that Excel and organize the folder. And now with the advent of AI, it becomes even less, it's even more nonsensical to keep people tied to these repetitive robotic tasks, because they could be doing something else. And that is going to, I believe in the majority of people, will motivate people even more to be more productive and more involved within their company's culture.
I'm terrified about what you just said, because here's some concerns. What I have about what you're saying is person X generates spreadsheet to pass to a person. They do that, and that cog in the machine becomes efficient and it works. And they don't want to change that. They want to continue to repeat that. I understand why that works.
Right.
There's a sense of self-security in knowing that you have started and finished and completed a task.
Yeah.
So there is a sense of security and control and power and confidence, all these things that are central to the human spirit. And then I would say there are people more like me. I pretty much start everything with the premise of I have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm going to mess it up and get it wrong a bunch. And in fact, I don't ever think that I'm going to get it right. And I also think that when I deal with major brands or business professionals, I try to be as forthright as possible. I had a conversation recently with a senior executive from a global brand, and because of the internet, people for some reason think social media that I might know what I'm talking about. I think the algorithms and LinkedIn or whatever gives you this sort of halo of social proof that isn't actually valid. And so they for some reason, they think that I know what I'm talking about. And I'm clear, and I just said they were anticipating that I was going to do a good job for them. And I had to calibrate and say, let's calibrate. At best, I'm about 51% of the time right. Like, What makes me different than others is I'm normally 51% right. A lot of other people might be 50-50. I generally am, but if you think I'm 100% right all the time,
right,
we're not even in
those
the
are
same
big
conversation.
percentages. Yeah, exactly.
So the reason I say this to you as a philosophical
Right.
peer is I just have come to realize that there, I think, are two entirely different species of people living on this planet. Because to take someone's control and repetition away from them would be
I
like... I
understand what you mean completely.
Would be like if someone came to me and said, you could be so much happier, Dennis, if you just move this microphone from this side of the table and back. Like, do that 27 times a day.
And then clock out.
And then clock out. You'd be set. I would freak out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's going on there?
I understand perfectly where you're coming from. And I think you could classify things as having two completely different species living on this planet, because I, like you, would completely freak out if I had just had to do those repetitive tasks on a daily basis. And most of the work that I've done throughout the years is finding ways to not be bogged down into having to do those repetitive tasks. It's not a mystery in my mind, realizing that those times that I've been more depressed or more unmotivated with work were precisely those times where I was in a repetitive sort of a stream of process. And once we get into the grind of adult life, of waking up, getting into public transport, going to work, clocking in, sitting down, opening up that work, then going out to lunch, coming back, clocking out, going back home. The loop. That loop, or as David Foster Wallace used to say, water. This is water. This is this medium that we're all in, that every human being understands that, or doesn't understand. I mean, we're all in this together, and we're all having these experiences ourselves, and we don't take that much time. We're not allowed that much time to empathize with the fact that we're all struggling in some way or another, or we're all succeeding in some way or another. In those times that I have come across situations where there was real resistance to changing a particular process because of the person assigned to that particular process, usually management is... I've been lucky to work with very good managers throughout the years. We're savvy enough to not even go there. Find ways of making it work without taking the control away from that person. And it has come to the point where throughout the years, there are particular people within the organization that we know who exactly to go to for that particular process, because that's the owner of that process. I've had the advantage of, in the 3 departments or so that I've been in, always be a sort of internal consultant looking at ways of how to make things work better, looking at the points of action. But I've always had the caution to not take away from the personal ownership that a particular person has with their processes. I've always been mindful of that, because my experience as a professional doesn't have to be the experience of another person as a professional.
You bring up a couple of things. One is, for people to change, they have to feel safe in an organization. Innovation comes from a place of safety a lot of times, although necessity and fear are also
great
strong motivators as well. But positive, scalable change, I think, happens from a place of safety. I agree with you that in a business culture, it's important to create a sense of safety and a pathway for someone to believe in the change that can happen, and to share the outcomes that benefit as many as possible. If we even just talk about personas in and of ourselves, you and I might be very similar personas or archetypes. I think about how we implement customer experience. You need creative people to identify the opportunities, and you need the process repetitive, consistent people to make it stick. But sometimes I just don't know how to do that without driving people crazy. You know, I was talking to someone, I think it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
They were texting me because my birthday is coming up on October 24th. I'll be 55 years old. And they were saying, I want to send you something on your birthday. Where are you going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I think I might be in Berlin. And they were like, are you going to be in Berlin or not? And I was like, I don't know. And they said, your event is on the 23rd of Berlin. And I said, it is. I will be in Berlin on the 23rd, but I don't know where I'll be on the 24th.
Right.
And they were like, why are you being elusive? Why won't you just tell me? Like, could you just, like, this is like, I'm trying to do something nice. Why don't you just tell me the answer? And it doesn't occur to the person. And I
don't know.
Yeah, that I don't know. And so I had to explain, this might sound crazy. I don't even have my ticket to Berlin yet. It's today, what day is today? Friday?
Friday the 18th.
So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I need to be in Berlin. I don't have a plane ticket to Berlin yet. I don't even know where I don't even think I know where I'm staying. So, but that would drives some people absolutely crazy.
That lack of control. Yeah.
But I can tell you that if somebody needed me right now in Ireland, by tomorrow, I'd be there.
Yeah.
And so how, as a philosopher and a CXer, how do you put these archetypes together into teams? How do you educate people to work together? Can you bring some of these philosophical concepts together so our audience might be able to, because there's managers out there who are saying, I've got guys like Dennis and they drive me crazy. I've got guys like Miguel, they drive me crazy.
Exactly.
So what is a business supposed to do?
One of the things that I think it's very normal to discuss either in a philosophical point of view or in a more, when we're discussing, holistic aspects of the universe. You mentioned earlier the, energies and law of attraction, and whenever we're in that positive kind of field, Instagrammers always talking about these positive quotes and whatnot. We tend to talk a lot about the self and the acceptance of others, etc. This isn't something that is much covered within the business world, and not just the business world, even in business schools. I think, for example, the discussion around ethics or even philosophy as a whole is just not a key point in many discussions. What I'm trying to say is that as we live life, we are literally the center of our own universes. Everything we do in our life, we are at the center of it. So to think that other people don't see themselves as the center of their own universes is something that we need to factor into any discussion. I'm at the center of my universe. I understand that you, Dennis, are at the center of your universe, and that we have to find a way of our universes working together without colliding and annihilating each other. And when it comes to a management role, you need to understand that everybody is having their own human experience, their own human moments, their own human concerns. They have their own personalities, their own ways of working, that we need to find common ground. I used to tell a friend of mine who would be driven insane by the way another friend of ours would take decisions or not make decisions. And I used to tell him, you need to know exactly how to calibrate what you can expect out of him. Not in real terms of, I expect you to do this. No, you're expecting too much for what we know this friend is. He will never go to that point that you're expecting him to be at. And the only person that's been driven crazy is you. So he's fine. He's doing his life. He's living his life as best as he understands. But you're driving yourself insane because you're expecting another human to act within the patterns that you are built in. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying.
You're trying to fit someone else into your own reality. You bring up one of my other core tenets of customer experience, which is everyone is the hero of their own story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're all just side characters in someone else's story.
Exactly.
We're not there to
take over their storyline.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have nothing to do with their journey, in fact.
Absolutely.
We are participants in their own hero experience. And what I sometimes when I tell this story, and I'll share with you because I think maybe you can take it into your world. I worked on the customer experience for McDonald's, mapping the journey, doing the customer research, aligning the customer perceptions and realities with the operations, the franchise, the owner-operators, realities, bringing these two universes closer together. I worked on that, and I did that from qualitative, quantitative, strategic, tactical. This was a job, and I take my jobs very seriously. I'm a little bit compulsive about this sort of stuff. And then I was driving my daughter, and her cheerleader, there was a bunch of cheerleaders. I had a big car. All the cheerleaders were in the back. And I was driving him down to cheer camp, and I passed by a McDonald's. I see a McDonald's, and I'm like, we've got time. I take a right-hand turn.
Right.
I hit the drive-through. I am like, I wonder how long this drive-through is going to take. Okay. I order the stuff. Boom. I'm like, I wonder how long this transaction. And I'm sort of not obsessive, but I'm just like learning the experience. And we drive off, and I'm like, okay. Good service, friendly, smile, fast, no line, efficient, all the things about McDonald's, the experience, blah. And as we were driving down the highway to the cheer camp, I looked back in the rearview mirror. They were eating French fries, eating their sandwiches and their nuggets. Everybody was sipping on their sodas. They were all talking. They were all excited. And it dawned on me that was exactly what I expected to happen. That driving down without McDonald's was going to be one experience.
Absolutely.
Driving with McDonald's was going to be that.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was the hero. Now, I don't know if they felt like I was the hero, but what I knew is when I dropped them off, my daughter was happy. She was like, thanks, Dad. We're going to have a great time. They all ran off to do their thing. And I had increased my sense of self-worth it was my own quest.
Absolutely.
And it's true. It's like hard to map those experiences.
And that last bit of the experience, the looking back in the rearview mirror and seeing them eating the fries and being happy and talking and ecstatic and all those things, that even that collective shared experience that they had, because not only were you the hero of your story, but you created a memory, a core memory shared between all of them.
It's amazing, the psychology. So your management expertise to help rally these different archetypes in a structure is what? Final word of advice for the audience.
Allow people the space to make decisions, which will allow them to discover not only something about themselves, but what their worth is within the structure. So if you are trying to micromanage every little decision, every little aspect, you don't have people that are working for you. You have cogs. So the fact that you have, I don't like saying human resources, but the fact that you have human beings working for you or with you, you need to open up the possibility for them to bring their human experience to the table, to the experience, because I, as a customer, am incredibly exigent. I will be on the phone for 3 hours if needs be, with my own company or with any other company. I know the patterns or the standards that I look for in a service. much to my detriment at times, because I'm quite stubborn in that aspect. So if I think that the customer service should be, or the customer experience should be a certain way, I will go far to, you know, writing letters to the company and say, hey, this is my experience as a CXer. I'm not just complaining, this is advice. And sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. But if we as managers or in managing an experience don't give other people the opportunity and the room to actually contribute towards that experience through their own lens, through their own conceptual lens, I think we're missing out on a lot. And I think that we should give people more of an opportunity to be a part of the decision-making process.
Agreed. And I think what I might just to also add some language there is, it sounds like what you're recommending is to give people permission to express themselves. And that sounds easy until they want to express something that isn't popular. So what I hear you saying is be comfortable with the unknown. Let people express the unpopular. Cultivate a team where open-mindedness and pride of ownership
absolutely
can be an asset to growing.
And if you allow me just to draw full circle to what we were discussing in the beginning, the pilot program of the school, it's called Akshar Foundation. One of the ways that they found to change the way that education was being transmitted to kids was to find a method of one-on-one tutoring for each kid. So let's say a 10-year-old has a mastery on a particular subject. He will be assigned to be the tutor of a younger kid who's 5 or 6 or 7, who's just trying to get through his letters. So rather than having one teacher's attention diffused between 30, you'll have the teacher who will help guide some of the older kids who will by themselves have direct attention for each of the particular students. And they are remunerated for their work as tutors, not in legal tender, but on credits that they can use to buy toothpaste and necessities and whatnot. Just the fact that you're giving them the responsibility of teaching, of educating another one of the peers, and me as a 37-year-old will have a lot of difficulty of bridging to a 5-year-old. But a 10-year-old to a 5-year-old, they have a lot more commonality there than me as an adult can have with the little ones. So this particular model seems to work very well, especially with kids that used to be on a path to delinquency. Just the fact that you're now giving them this level of responsibility changes them completely. They become almost like model citizens. It's because you've given them a chance to have an impact on somebody's life.
I think the title of this podcast is going to be The Joy of Mastery. And I think what you eloquently summed up this whole conversation is, when we began, I felt as though the joy of mastery was I've learned, and I've become the master. But the full picture is, if I know something and I teach it to you, I experience the joy of you mastering it. And that might be even better. Miguel, thank you so much for joining me here and being on the podcast.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in today. For more podcasts, YouTube videos, or to join our expanding Slack community, visit www.denniswakabayashi.com/join-slack-community. Until next time, let's work together to make every experience a great one.